I love fall. Fall is the best.
Okay, besties, it's August 31st, and you know what that means. It's time for fall. The highs in Atlanta have finally hit only 80 degrees, as if that's not still very hot. But I've got my sweater out, I got my pumpkin earrings on, and I'm ready to go. I have compiled this list of book recommendations for you based on the months. September, we're like warming up into fall. We just came out of August. We might still have summer on the brain. So what we need is a collection of books that kind of get us in the autumnal spirit, make us start feeling a little cozy, getting us ready for spooky season. So starting out, we're gonna go with the whimsical, atmospheric books that kind of feel a little nostalgic. The first of these is Piranesi. It's about this guy, and he lives in a labyrinth that's full of these hallowed halls, and there's an ocean, and there's waves, and there's statues. And so the whole book is kind of unraveling the mysteries of this labyrinth and this place that he's in this kind of fantastical realm. It just has a very atmospheric vibe. It really evokes fall to me because it's also kind of like a somber story. It also kind of has like an academic vibe to it just because of the way the Piranesi like takes notes on his surroundings. So I think that academic vibe lends to the September month. Up next, we have Spells for Forgetting. I think it is the most atmospheric fall book that you could possibly ever read. It's a little bit witchy, and it's about these people who live on this island, and there was a murder, and they're trying to solve what's going on with the murder, and it gives kind of like practical magic vibes. I can't say it didn't have the most perfect fall vibe, because it really did. Okay, up next we have Our Wives Under the Sea. This is technically a horror book, but it's not really like an October horror book because the horror elements in this are pretty light. It's basically just using horror as a vehicle to explore grief. This is more about the prose and about the relationship between the two women in this. So Leah goes on a deep sea mission. She is whatever people who go into the ocean are called. I don't remember what that's called. And she ends up going missing for I think 6 months. And then when she comes back, Miri is so excited to have her back, but Leah is like very different. And so this book is kind of going through their relationship, how they got together, a lot of memory scenes. So there's a bit of like romance in it, but it's also very sad because Leah is just so different now that she's come back from this journey and from this mission that she went on. Also, there's some chapters of Leah on the mission. Those are kind of the horror elements in this. But I just found this to be such an atmospheric read, a relationship really that's about love and loss, and it made me cry at the end of it. And I've just always thought this book was so beautiful, and it doesn't necessarily take place during the fall, but it definitely evokes that feeling of like there's a chill in the air and you're just like sad and you want to put a little sweater on. You know, in a movie when like the single mom goes out on the deck and there's like a beach breeze coming in and she kind of wraps her sweater around her. Like that's the vibe that this book gives, but like with more horror elements. And then our final book in this like whimsical category is actually a nonfiction. It's a memoir called In the Dream House. The reason I chose this is because although it is nonfiction, it has a very whimsical, dreamy quality to it because the author actually wrote it from the perspective of like telling a story where she has all these vignettes of like taking you through a house and giving you these moments because she's exploring a very traumatic and kind of abusive relationship. She is telling you a very sad story, but it's also very like whimsical and dark and moody. And I feel like it would just like perfectly set the tone for fall because, you know, you're really taking in the story and then also taking in the beautiful imagery. She also talks a lot about like movies in it. There's a couple horror movies she talks about. She kind of compares and contrasts like what she's talking about to like queer media, and it's just a really, really interesting memoir. It's probably one of the best memoirs I've ever read, so I would highly recommend it if you're looking for something that's a little different from everything else on this list. Okay, up next we have Dark Academia because September is when people go back to school. We have Ninth House. This book is about our character Alex Stern, and she is a drug addict and she overdoses, and then she gets a call from Yale while she's in the hospital and they're like, hey girlie, so we heard that you can see ghosts and we kind of need somebody to come to Yale and overlook all of these like secret societies, so we're gonna let you come to Yale even though you're basically a high school dropout, and you just need to do this like quick little favor for us and it'll be fine, you'll work for us. So she goes and she joins this Leafy Society, and she's basically just overseeing all of these high-powered people that are in these like very dark underground cults, and they're performing magic and they're doing all these things, and she has to use her abilities to help manage and govern these societies. And in this, she actually discovers a dead body, and she's like, something is not right, something's not working, we need to get to the bottom of this. So she starts looking into that mystery. It's just so good, and it's so fall. Like Yale, like walking around stomping in some combat boots, crunching on some leaves, that's what Alex Stern is doing. It's giving the perfect Dark Academia fall vibe. And then we have If We Were Villains, which is also a murder mystery of sorts. Our main character in this book is released from prison because 10 years ago when he was was at university, one of his friends was murdered and he took the fall for that. And so now he's kind of telling the tale of what happened in college that led up to those events. It's giving very much The Secret History. A lot of people compare those two books. I'm not personally a Secret History stan. I like If We Were Villains a lot better. I feel like you're one of two people, you pick one or the other. I personally find Donna Tartt's writing to be kind of boring. Please don't shoot me if you love her. But this I feel like is a lot more digestible, and I found the writing a little bit more interesting. This friend group that's going on in this university is in this club because they are kind of going to school for theater, and they're having this club where they put on like Shakespeare plays, and all this kind of leads to things that happen in the friend group that kind of emulate some of Shakespeare's plays. But it has like the perfect autumnal vibe, and they're like out of school. Up next we have In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. This is actually technically a thriller, so this could go in the October category, but it has an academic vibe because they're also in college in this. But basically there's a friend group and there's a murder that happens while they're in college, and they never figure out who did it, and there's like one person who's been like accused of doing it. And we're kind of examining this story through Jessica's perspective, and Jessica is this like try-hard girl who her whole life has always just been wanted to be like really popular, and this friend group she falls in with is like very wealthy and she doesn't really fit in. And so we're kind of bouncing back and forth between present day when they're coming to this college reunion where they've all been brought together because somebody wants to be like whodunit, and we're also kind of seeing how she entered this friend group back when she was all the way in college. There's a romance in this that I absolutely love, and it just has that perfect vibe where they're like at a university. It's very like grand, but then also there's like these like toxic things that are happening in the friend group, and it's like, who got murdered, what happened, why is it like this? The final dark academia book I have for you is They Never Learn. Again, technically a thriller, could be in the October category, but still has an academic vibe. We're following a college professor in this who actually murders men who are abusers, like people who've essayed women, who've done really bad stuff. Every year she chooses a student or a person who's done something like that, and she kills them. And this year she made a mistake, and now a police officer, who by the way is a very attractive woman that she's a little bit into, has come to town being like, what's happening with these things? These deaths aren't adding up. We're also following a college freshman who's kind of living through the college freshman experiences, and so it's kind of a juxtaposition between those two stories of a woman who's like very sure of herself, killing people, and then a girl who's just started in college and doesn't really know her way. The next category I have for you is dark romance, because again, maybe we're not quite ready for spooky season. We're not really going to try to dive into the horror books just yet. We want something that has a dark energy but isn't quite all the way yet. I am very picky about dark romance, and you're going to notice a theme. All the dark romance I like has serial killers in it, so maybe this category should have just been called serial killers. First of these is the Mindfuck series. I actually made this cover myself. I did a book binding video last October, and I actually rebound this book myself, and I think I did a pretty good job because the original cover for this is Ugly as Sin. In this book we're following a woman named Lana, and when she was a teenager she was wronged by a bunch of men in her small town, and they left her for dead, and she rose from the ashes and recreated herself, and now she's hunting them down one by one and murdering all of them. But along the way she meets a guy. Boy meets girl situation. They have a meet cute at a cafe. Lo and behold, he is the FBI agent that is trying to solve all these murders that she's committing. This is a case where I love the main character. It's a good for her story where you're like, yeah girl, get them, especially when you read what happened to her. There's some very dark scenes in this. Oh, I can see why you're murdering those people. I am categorizing this as a dark romance, but really the boyfriend, the FBI agent, he's just a random blonde man. He's fine, he's there. I like him because Lana likes him, and Lana's my queen, so I'm like, if you like him I support you. But this is definitely more for if you want like a good for her story, like an unhinged, morally gray main character, but there's a bit of romance in it if you're into that. Up next we have Butcher and Blackbird, which is kind of like a dark romance but romantic comedy vibe. In it we have these two serial killers, and they both have an MO for killing specifically criminals. They cross paths one day because the main female character ends up in a trap of her own making. The other guy finds her in the trap and he like lets her out, and then they go on a date, and he's like obsessed with her. This is very much a he fell first, where he is a huge fan of her work. He's like, oh my god, you are this serial killer? I am such a fan of your work. He's like fangirling, and then they come up with this bet where they're like, oh, we're gonna kill these certain people at this certain time, and they start doing this contest, and they're like falling in love. And so the book takes place over like a long period of time where they're like texting and they're perioding and there's banter, and it's very, very cute. Then we have the Darkly Madly duet. The first book in this is called Born Darkly, and this is another serial killer romance. I told you I got a thing for it. I am a white woman. In this we're following a woman named London who is a criminal psychologist, and she gets assigned to this serial killer named Grayson. He is like obsessed with her from like day one, and he's like, you will be mine. And she's like, I am a professional, I'm a working girl, like please leave me alone. And he's like, but I have to have you. And so this is kind of a descent into madness where at first she's like, whoa, stay back, but then like the more they get into it, like the sexier it gets. This one is like Mama, I'm in love with the criminal. Up next, we have actually an urban fantasy series that actually doesn't have any serial killers in it, and that is the Dark Fever series. I would categorize this as a dark romance because it's one of those really slow burn urban fantasies where the main couple doesn't really kiss or do anything until like the 5th or 6th book, but the way that the events unfold are not, I wouldn't say they're kosher. I wouldn't even say they're always consensual. We have our main character who is going to Ireland because her sister was studying abroad there and she was murdered, and the police there have given up on this search to figure out like who killed her, blah, blah, blah. So she goes to Dublin and she's like, I'm gonna get to the bottom of who killed my sister because she was my everything. So she gets there and then she discovers that her sister like fell into this world of the dark fae. And then she comes across this guy who's part of the fae. And so they start working together, but they hate each other at the beginning. And slowly their romance starts to take off. And then finally, I have another book that's technically a horror book, but there's a romance in it. It's actually a hockey romance and I'm obsessed. And that is Mayfly. So in this book, we're following our main character and she actually is a serial killer. She is. She kills people. She does bad stuff. I wouldn't call her a good for her kind of serial killer. She's more of an unhinged lady where you're like, whoa, I don't support everything you're doing, but I do admire you and like you. And so in this, she comes across her best friend's brother, who's a hockey player, and they start having a romance. And I thought the romance was so cute. And the book is very like American Psycho, but for the girls. So if you want anything that kind of feels like that, it's like Morley Gray. No, actually, no, not even Morley Gray. No, it's just wrong. It's wrong. Actually, a lot of the stuff she does is actually wrong. I said I was gonna start easy with the September Rex and then I recommended that, so I don't know. Okay, and then speaking of Morley Gray characters, that's how we're gonna close out this September month. For this, I definitely have Book of Night. This is a divisive book amongst a lot of people, but I love it. I would say if you like urban fantasy, especially like the mass market paperback kind, you would love this. I think people went into this expecting The Cruel Prince. Basically, our main character is a woman named Charlie Hall, and she has always been a thief. That's like been her whole thing for so many years. But recently she's trying to clean up her act and she's working as a bartender. And in this world, there is shadow magic. So people like sell their shadows on the black market. And there's people who can wield shadows to do things, like people can like make demons with their shadows. Like, there's all sorts of things that people can do with their shadow. And shadow magic is very crazy. And people who can like split their shadow from themselves are like these like special people. And so Charlie is a regular girl who has always tried to stay away from shadow magic. And then the reason she kind of left her thievery was because she kind of felt like that world was a little too dark and she's trying to take care of her younger sister. But in the beginning of this, something happens at her bar and she gets very mixed up in the wrong crowd, and these people kind of blackmail her into helping them find a magic book, the Book of Night. And there also is a romance that is so cute. And when I figured out what was going on with it, I was like, ah, amazing, amazing. I'm so excited for the next book. I can't wait to see where the story goes. But I definitely would say I would recommend this to you if you like main characters that are thieves. I kind of have a thing for that. I really like main characters that are criminals in some way. All right, and then we have A Certain Hunger. This is following our main character, Dorothy. And Dorothy's a little misanthropic. She doesn't really like people. And one day she has this boyfriend who accidentally dies. And she's like, what if I ate his insides? So she starts eating him and she's like, humans are very good. So then she kind of becomes a Black Widow serial killer where she's killing all of her boyfriends to eat them. And she ends up in prison. And so this book that she's writing is her kind of talking about her exploits and how she ended up here. And what I love about this book is that Dorothy is absolutely a narcissist. Like, she is like, you guys are so obsessed with me. That's why you're reading my story right now. And I just loved that kind of patronizing tone throughout the book. I just think Dorothy's kind of a queen. Like, this is like girl dinner. I support women's wrongs, and it's just a good time. And then our final September book of a Morley Gray main character. Again, I don't know why I said Morley Gray. I realize now I shouldn't have titled this category Morley Gray because the person in this book is also just flat out wrong. This is You'd Look Better as a Ghost, and we're following a serial killer. Again, this is kind of a thriller, but it's not that scary. There is like a mystery and like twists that happen in this book, but I would definitely say it's kind of more of like a comedy dramedy. We're following our main character, Claire, and her father recently died. So she's like very upset, and she is an artist and she submits her art to a contest, and she thinks that she got accepted because she gets an email, but it's to the wrong Claire. She decides to get back at the guy who sent her the wrong email by killing him. Killing him kind of leads her into a series of events where it's kind of like if you give a mouse a cookie, but it's like if you kill one person, you got to keep killing other people. I just saw on my phone there's actually one more September book, and that is Slewfoot, which again could be considered a horror, but I feel like it's more of a good for her story, and it's also not Morley Gray. I'm realizing now Book of Night is the only one that's actually Morley Gray. I should have just said bad main characters that do bad things. In Slewfoot, we're following this main character whose husband dies. This demon comes to her and he's like, hey, would you want to make a deal with me? Because all the villagers are like trying to take her farm from her and not treat her well, because because it's set in like a Puritan kind of setting. And so, and I kind of feel like the Puritans give fall vibes, right? Because it's kind of like the Pilgrims, like that's the energy. So it's definitely giving fall to me. It's kind of like The Witch, the movie, if you think about that. But anyway, so she makes a deal with this demon Slewfoot to have power over the villagers, and she starts taking her revenge on all the villagers because they tried to like take her farm from her and do all this bad stuff. And so you're just kind of reading what goes down with that. If you like a revenge story slash demon-y vibe. Okay, moving on into the October recommendations. These are the true spooky books, the ones that might give you a little chill, a bump in the night. I'm gonna start out with some books that have a dark gothic vibe. We're kind of warming up into the scariness. First of these is The Last Tale of the Flower Bride. Basically in this, we're following a guy who's telling the story of like how he met his wife, because she's a very like mysterious woman named Indigo. Someone in her family dies and they have to go to her family estate. And when he gets there, he realizes that not everything is as it seems. Like, is his wife really who she says she is? And so we're kind of unraveling that in that timeline. But then in the past timeline, we're following Indigo as a teenager because she had this very toxic best friendship with another girl from her school. And it's all about their ins and outs and how they have this kind of just really close like sisterly bond, but there's also like jealousy and dark energy like around it. And there's also kind of a fantasy element to this where you're not really sure what's real. Like, are they crazy? Are they fairies? Are they this or that? Like, it's like, is anything real? I don't know. And this is really just kind of exploring like toxic, twisted female friendship. So if you're a fan of that, I really think you would like this. I feel like it's really starts to like set the mood. And obviously when they go to Indigo's family estate, it is giving gothic vibes because the house that she grew up in, she grew up very wealthy, and it's a good time. And then we have the queen of all gothic books, and that is A Dowry of Blood. Everyone say thank you to Riley for giving me one of her copies of this so I could have the original cover, because you can't get this cover anymore. This is the self-published cover, like before it was traditionally published, and I don't know why they ever didn't go with this cover, because this cover is absolutely beautiful. But this is a vampire story following one of Dracula's wives, and it's an epistolary novel where she's writing a letter to Dracula telling him, this is why I had to murder you. And so we're just kind of following her life. Like, how did she become a vampire? What did Dracula do? Like, what is this abusive, toxic relationship? And it just has that perfect like gothic vampire vibe that you would be looking for. The writing style in this is just chef's kiss. It's so good. So I highly recommend you pick this up. I know you've heard people talk about it. It's also not very long. It will give you the gothic vibes that you're looking for. The final dark gothic book I'll recommend is House of Hollow. This is actually a YA book that follows these three sisters that many years ago, they went missing when they were children. Their parents like could not find them. And one day, I think it's like a month later, they show up and they're changed. They're very different. They act very odd. And their parents are like, these aren't our children. But they're like, no, we are your children. So then they grow up and they become these kind of enigmatic women. Like, all of them have a different tale. Like, one of them goes off to be a model, and one of them is, I don't know what she does actually. Like, I think one of them is like a rock star, and then one of them is a model. And then we have the youngest sister who's kind of telling the story, and she's kind of uncovering their past because nobody has any memory of where they went when they were missing. Like, she doesn't even know. And so they're trying to like kind of unravel what happened. And it has kind of a dark fantasy fairy tale vibe to it. And it just has like a very like haunting gothic energy. And I just feel like if there was a chill in the air, you would be like very sat reading this because the writing style is really great. Okay, now we're moving on into actual thrillers. Thrillers that might give you a little chill. That might be like, oh, what's going on? There's like plot twists, things are going on. You're like, oh, it's kind of scary. It's October. First of these is Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. I actually do own a copy of this, but I have no idea where it is. Obviously, I moved a while ago. You all know that. And my shelves are still a mess, and I couldn't find my copy of it. Pretty Girls is following these two sisters. We have Claire and Lydia, and they've been estranged for many years. And at the beginning of this book, Claire and her husband are out to dinner, and they get jumped in an alley, and her husband ends up getting murdered. And then she goes on his computer, click-clacking away, and she starts finding some stuff that isn't looking too good. That's a little bit frightening. And so her and her sister reconnect to kind of get to the bottom of this. And there's also like a secondary mystery going on in the background where their sister went missing in the 80s. And so they're also kind of wondering what happened to their sister back in the day. And so they're kind of uncovering all the dark misdeeds of Claire's husband. And I don't want to say too much more, but I will give the trigger warning that this book is extremely violent against women. So if you don't like a really dark, gritty, like true crime sort of thriller book, I don't recommend this for you. But if you want to read something where the imagery will be burned in your head, there are images from this book that truly have never left my head. Up next, we have The Broken Girls. This is a book following, again, some sisters of some sort. So our main character, many years ago, her sister was murdered near a boarding school. The school has since been closed down. Like, nobody goes to the school, but everyone says there's ghosts that kind of go around this field where her sister was murdered. And so someone has decided to buy the school and start opening it again. And as they're digging, they find bones. And it's not her sister, because obviously her sister's body was recovered. It's like the body of someone else. And so now our main character is, I think she's a journalist. So she's starting to be like, something is going on. I need to get to the bottom of this. So she starts to uncover like the town has way more mysteries than just what happened to her sister. Up next, we have The Last House on Needless Street. This is a very confusing thriller. I wouldn't recommend this for everyone. I would say if you like thrillers that kind of hurt your brain a little bit, I think you'll like this. I don't want to say too much about it because it's confusing. There is a perspective from a cat though. So if you enjoy reading books where there's a cat that has a perspective, then you might like this. But I think this is a really, really good book if you want something that kind of is like a brain teaser. Okay, and then we have True Crime Story. This is one of my favorite thrillers, and I highly recommend this on audio because it does have a full cast narration because it's told through interviews. It is all about this true crime writer who is writing a book about this girl who went missing over a decade ago, and he's kind of questioning everybody in her life, trying to get to the bottom of like what happened to her. And what's really interesting about this book is the author, Joseph Knox, actually wrote himself into it. So he is the true crime writer that's like in the book, and he wrote it in such a way where it actually feels like a true crime story, like feels like something true crime like that actually happened. Like at one point when I was reading it, I had to Google like, is this real? Because of the way Joseph Knox was writing it. But there's so many twists and turns in this, and what I really like about it is that it's told out of order because all the interviews you're getting from people, they're not all admitting things at the same time. So again, if you like a thriller that kind of like takes a lot of tracking in your brain, like it's very like Pepe Silva vibes, then I think you would like this. This next book is not really fall vibes because it takes place during the winter, but I have to recommend it if you're just looking for a good thriller. Like if you want a thriller that's not a domestic thriller, that has, you know, just a lot of like energy, it's like high octane, like, oh my god, I'm on the edge of my seat, this is what I would recommend to you. So No Exit is following this girl who is driving in the middle of a snowstorm, and so she has to pull off in this rest stop, and when she gets in there, she realizes that everyone in there is kind of, it's just a weird ragtag group of people, and she goes out to her car to make a phone call, and in a van she sees a little girl in there, and she's like, what the fuck? Because the little girl's in a cage. So she has to go back into the rest stop and pretend she didn't see anything, and she's trying to figure out like who kidnapped this girl. And so it's all about the events of this night that unfold, where she's trying to save this little girl. There's no cell service. She's running around in a snowstorm, and there's like people she can't trust, and it's like a very like closed circle kind of mystery situation. And my adrenaline was going when I read this book. I feel like it has the perfect fall vibes, even though it's really like a winter book because like it's so snowy in it, but I feel like it still has that like feeling I want when I'm really reading a thriller during spooky season. Okay, this next book is not really a thriller. I don't really know where to put this because this isn't thriller or horror, and we're about to talk about horror books. This falls somewhere in the middle. It's kind of just like a paranormal story with some spooky elements. So this is The Diviners. This is one of my all-time favorite books. Our main character is a girl named Evie, and she can read objects, and she gets sent to live with her uncle who owns like an oddities museum. He's called upon to go to this murder scene because there is some like demonology stuff, like symbols going on. She touches something at the murder scene and she gets like a flashback of, oh my god, I like know what's going on, I know who the murderer is. And so then she makes a bunch of friends with some other teenagers that also have powers, and it's all about them kind of getting to the bottom of this nefarious stuff that's happening. And the murderer in this book, oh my god, Naughty John. I mean, I'll say you meet Naughty John like literally like first chapter, so that's not a spoiler. Naughty John actually scared me. I remember listening to the audiobook for this when I first read it, like at night, and I had to turn the light on because I was scared. I was scared. But I highly recommend this if you like books that takes place in the 1920s. It has like a historical vibe. There's flappers. There's just like the way they talk, like everything about it is so good. Also, I highly recommend the audiobook because January Lavoie, the audiobook narrator, is so fantastic. Like she's so good. This story, honestly, even if you don't read the rest of the series, this book alone, like from start to finish, is a really good, what's going on, what's the mystery, what's going on, you know, like as you uncover stuff. All right, it wouldn't be October without horror books. We need to get into the nitty-gritty, into the horror. And so we're gonna start out with one of my favorites, The Patient by Jasper DeWitt. This book is told kind of like subreddit style, where it's this guy writing on a message board, kind of telling the story of what happened to him as a psychiatrist at this specific hospital. They have this one patient that's in a wing of his own, and like nobody's allowed to go talk to him. And so he like convinces the staff, like, you have to go let me treat this person. And so he goes and he has to start uncovering like, why is this guy by himself? And like people start like dying around. It's like, what's going on? Also, the ending of this, chef's kiss. That's kind of hard with horror sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't stick the landing. This one totally did. Now we have The Hollow Places. This is a book where it will scare you, but it'll also make you laugh. It is kind of a tongue-in-cheek way of telling the story, where there's moments of levity, but then there's also moments where you're like, what the fuck? So we're following this main character named Kara, and her uncle owns an oddities museum. A lot of oddities museums happening in these recommendations. And her uncle has to go get surgery, so she's like overlooking the museum. And one day she kind of goes through this door. She ends up in this like other dimension. tension. There's like these monsters and you're like, what's going on? I'm kind of scared. But then also like the main character is like cracking jokes and it's kind of funny. I don't know. I really like this. Is probably one of my favorite horror books of all time, just because I feel like the writing is just so fresh. The monster element of it and like just the unknown is kind of scary. I don't know. I just really enjoyed this. Okay, we also have Pen Pal, but we're following this guy that's had a stalker his whole life, like ever since he was 5. And so it's told through vignettes of him constantly feeling like there's this dark shadow, this dark entity like overshadowing his life and following him around, and a lot of very creepy things happen, like the chapter about the cat. One of my biggest fears is having a stalker, so I feel like this book, especially if you're a woman, just evokes that like feeling. Like I remember reading it at night being like, oh my god, this might be one of the scariest things I've ever read. Okay, and then I'm gonna go ahead and recommend episode 13. This is another one where I implore you to listen to the audiobook because it is told through like recordings and there's different voice actors, and it's also like a reality TV show, because basically we're following these ghost hunters who go to this abandoned estate. I can't remember if it's like an estate or an asylum or something, but it's where in the 70s there were all these scientists like doing experiments on people, and it was like very like freaky shit, very Twilight Zone vibes. And so all these people went missing, like Roanoke style. Like one day they were just all gone and nobody knows where they are. So they go to this house to kind of uncover what's going on because they're ghost hunters. And the first 75% of this, I was in tears. I was so scared. I was listening to the audiobook and I had to like turn my light on because I was like, oh my god. And I stayed up like all night listening to this. It's such a trip if you like that kind of ghost hunter, like what's going on vibe. Next book is The Vessel. I would say if you're a fan of like Midsummer or Hereditary, I think you would really like this book. It just has that, I don't know, it has that Ari Aster vibe to it. Basically, we're following this woman who's a caregiver, and she starts working for this elderly woman who just has like a bad vibe. Like she has a really bad, like this woman is like evil vibes. But weirdly, the woman is very obsessed with her daughter, because one day, she's a single mom, she has to bring her daughter to work. The old lady is like, oh my god, obsessed with your daughter. But then like weird vibes and ritual and like stuff starts happening, and so our main character is like, what the fuck? And so it's all kind of her unraveling like what's going on at this old woman's house, because the old woman is also kind of like a hoarder and there's like stuff everywhere, and she's just very like, what did I get myself into? And if you like freaky old people stories, or well, not like, but if you get scared by like freaky old people, this is the one for you. And then kind of going in the demonic route, we have Come Closer, which is a demon possession book about this woman. As she's writing the story, she's pretty positive that she is possessed by something, and so she is kind of trying to uncover like what's going on, because she's like losing kind of pockets of time like throughout the story, and she's like, oh my god, what's going on? Also throughout it, she's like taking this quiz to be like, are you possessed? And it's like the further you get in the story, the more like the quiz is, it's like a BuzzFeed quiz vibe, where she's like, the further she gets into the story, the more she's like, I think I might be possessed by a demon. And this one is kind of novella length, so it's pretty quick read. Final horror book that I'll recommend is Mary. This definitely could have gone in the bad main characters, unhinged women category, because we're following Mary, who has a questionable past. In the beginning of this book, she's having hot flashes and she doesn't feel well. She's having these hallucinations. Every time she looks in the mirror, her skin is melting off. Bad vibes. So she goes to the doctor and she's like, what the fuck is wrong with me? And the doctor's like, it's just menopause, because she's an older woman. The doctor, quite frankly, treats her very misogynistically. Her aunt is sick and her aunt's like, hey, can you come to Arizona to take care? I will say one thing about this is that the environment doesn't feel very fall, because it does take place in Arizona, which is like a desert. When she gets to this town, the town is got some fucked up vibes, because there was like a serial killer there in the 70s. There's a lot of people in this town that like are very into this like serial killer origin story for the town. Mary is kind of returning to where she grew up, because her aunt did raise her for a lot of her life, and so she's kind of trying to reconcile like what happened to her when she was younger, when she was like bullied, and now she's like an older woman and she's encountering all these people from like her early life. And then also she's like blacking out and like losing time sometimes, and she doesn't really know what's going on. And then on top of that, people start dying in this town, and Mary's like, what the fuck is going on? I don't know, I really liked her as a main character. I really care. She does do some things in the book where you're like, I was with you, Mary, until you did that. Okay, and then to close out the October section, I'm gonna give you some silly, goofy horror, like horror that's not as maybe scary as some of the other ones. The first of these is We Brought It Up on Sticks. This is about a field hockey team in the 80s that makes a deal with the devil to be better at playing hockey. I don't really know how I would qualify this. Like, it is kind of a horror book because there is like a demon vibe to it, but it's also kind of just like very funny. One thing that I always compare it to is if you've ever seen the movie Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the way that movie is edited is how this book feels. Like when there's like words on the screen and like weird perspectives and things happening. I feel like that's kind of how this book feels in the way that it's written, because like, for example, one of the characters has you know, she has the 80s bangs, and her bangs are a character that have like a point of view that like talk sometimes. If you like 80s Stranger Things sort of vibes, then I think you would really like this. Again, I hesitate to call it horror. It's not really horror. It's not scary really at all, but it does have that kind of we made a deal with the devil thing. Also, it takes place in Danvers, Massachusetts, which is where the original Salem witch trials were. And it also kind of plays into the whole 80s, like, oh my god, the devil's taking over our children. And then finally, I'm gonna go ahead and recommend Grady Hendrix as an author. My favorite of his books is My Best Friend's Exorcism, but I would also recommend How to Sell a Haunted House. Most of Grady Hendrix's horror books have a comedy element to them. They can be quite spooky, but also they have a bit of levity in them, and the characters are usually like quite complex. So My Best Friend's Exorcism is about these best friends that go on like a summer lake trip, and one of the girls comes back possessed with a demon, and only her best friend realizes, and so she's trying to convince everyone around her that her best friend is possessed, but like no one's taking her seriously. And so it's all about her trying to help her friend. And then How to Sell a Haunted House is about a brother and sister whose parents recently died. They're adults and they have to go back to their childhood home, and then there's like an evil possessed puppet there. I keep not consulting my list. I realized I actually forgot one of my silly goofy horrors, and that is Good Girls Don't Die. I would say it's like thriller horror vibes. It's kind of towing the line between the two. It's like 3 different vignettes of stories that kind of come together at the end, but it's all these women waking up in this scenario where they're like, what the fuck is going on? Like it's giving like Don't Worry Darling meets like Cabin in the Woods. There is an element of like Hunger Games in it. It's pulling on tropes and thrillers and stories that you've already seen or read before. I wouldn't say it's for everyone. I loved it. I read it in one sitting and I thought it was just so funny and fantastic. You kind of have to like, you know, suspend your disbelief. I will say, I've seen a lot of people be like, oh my god, this book is so dumb. It's if you want to have a silly goofy time. That's why it's in the silly goofy category. November, the air is crisper. It's getting cooler. Maybe where you live, it's already starting to snow. We are curling up by the fire. We are getting cozy. We are putting our gay frog sweater on. We are no longer in spooky season, really. We're still fall because it's like Thanksgiving, but we're really prepping for Christmas. So to start out, we're going to talk about cozy fantasy, because obviously cozy fantasy is something you're going to want to read when you want to be cozy. Up first, we have Someone You Can Build a Nest In. This book manages to be like a monster body horror book, but also be the cutest, cozy fantasy romance. We're following a monster named Shisheshen. And at the beginning of this book, a bunch of hunters come into her den and they're trying to kill her. She can like take on the form of other things. Like she basically is like an amorphous blob that can like absorb things and like make her appearance different. So she makes herself kind of look like a human when she's trying to get away from these hunters. This woman named Homily finds her and mistakes her for a human woman. And so she starts nursing her back to health, and Shisheshen ends up falling in love with Homily, and because she's a monster, she's like, oh my god, I love her so much, I should lay my eggs on her, not realizing that if she did that it would kill Homily. And so this book is all about her trying to evade these hunters and kind of navigate her relationship with Homily, even though she's, you know, never really been human before, and so she's kind of like human emotions and everything is very new to her. And what I really love about this book is that it has kind of spooky elements, but it's also very cozy and heartwarming, and like I really loved the romance. And it also has very good rep for asexual people, because of the relationship between Shisheshen and Homily isn't very sexual, and they kind of like explore that concept. And then we have the one that everyone will recommend, which is the Wayward Children series. This is a series of novellas about these children who have gone off to magical worlds, and this is about the aftermath when they come back. So it's almost like Alice in Wonderland after she went to Wonderland. And so they all end up going to this school for children, wayward children, obviously, but children who have had this experience. They all don't really know how to exist in the real world anymore because they, you know, miss these magical lands that they've been to. And so in this first book, we're following all these students at the school. There's actually a murder at the school, and so you're kind of solving this. And so every other novella takes place at the school, and then the other in-between novellas are actually about the children in the magical worlds they're in. So you get a little bit of everything. And then we have, I have to read it from my phone because I always get this title wrong, Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons. This is a book about this woman who ends up with a dragon's egg because she inherits, I can't remember if it's her great uncle. She inherits somebody's belongings, and there's a dragon egg in it. And she's a woman that like lives with her sister and her sister's like family and kids, and she is considered like a spinster. It's a little bit of a historical book, like it kind of takes place a ways back, and she comes across this dragon that is hatching, and she gets very attached to this dragon. And so it's all about her kind of trying to hide this dragon from people, and then people are trying to get the dragon, and there's a lot going on, and it's a lot of fun. I actually read this quite a while ago, but if you want like a cozy dragon fantasy where like there's also romance in it. If you enjoy like romances with like older people, because I find them that to be like quite heartwarming, there's also romance between her and someone. And then we have The House in the Cerulean Sea. This is kind of like a found family sort of book. We're following our main character, whose name is Linus, and he works for this department that manages magical children. So he goes to all these different orphanages and he makes sure that the kids are all in line, that the people taking care of them are making sure that they're not using their powers for evil. And so he actually gets sent to where they keep the most dangerous magical children to make sure that where they're staying is up to code. And when he gets there, these children really like teach him about life and family. And there's also a gay romance between him and the guy who's running the orphanage. This is like one of the most perfect cozy fantasies that like you truly will want to be drinking a cup of tea and like cuddled up when you're reading this, because it will make you laugh, it will make you cry. Like all the characters in this are so cute. Like I love all the children in it, and I'm not a children bitch, I'm really not. Everybody in this is so cute. It's like a very much like a modern fairy tale kind of whimsical vibe, and it's just so cute. Moving more into romantasy territory, we have Half a Soul. This is a Regency fairy tale sort of story about our main character, Dora, who when she was a child, she had a run-in with a fairy who stole half her soul. So all of her emotions and everything about her has always been very dampened, and she kind of struggles in social situations knowing how to say the right thing. And the only person in her life who loves her and is her friend is her cousin. They actually go to London for the season to kind of enter the town because her cousin is looking for a husband. Dora doesn't want to get in trouble, so she's trying to be a little bit more of like a wallflower, have no one talk to her. But then this magician, Elias, kind of comes across her and he's like, I can help you break your curse. And so together they're kind of working together to figure out. And there's also something going on in London where all these people are like, I think they're like falling asleep and they're not waking up. And so they're trying to figure out what's going on in London as well to like all the people. And so there's like a mystery and there's like dark fae and fairies. What I love about this is that the fae in this book are kind of like, they're like the fae that you would think, where they're like meant to be not necessarily good. Like not all of them, they're like tricksters and they're kind of bad. And it's actually in this world, like people are like, oh my God, don't fuck with the fae. And so this book is so cute. The romance between Dora and Elias, so cute. All right, up next we have another T. Kingfisher book, because T. Kingfisher not only writes horror, but she also writes fantasy. And I'm gonna recommend Nettle and Bone, because Nettle and Bone is the most perfect cozy fantasy in the sense that it's kind of like a dark cozy fantasy, because we're following this ragtag group of people as they go on a journey. We have our main character who is going to try to save her sister from like this evil prince. Along the way, she starts picking up like companions. Like she uses magic to make a bone dog. And so there's like literally a dog made of bones. And then she picks up like a witch along the way. There's like a fairy godmother. Honestly, there's so many different cozy fantasies that you could read from T. Kingfisher. This is just one of my favorites that kind of gives like a fall vibe. Our next cozy fantasy is Nevermore. I will say Nevermore to me gives more like winter vibes, but because November is all about warming up into winter, that's fine. But Morgan Crow is cursed because she was born on this specific day of the year. And so whenever anything bad happens, people blame her because they think she has like bad juju basically. And so on the eve of her 13th birthday, she's supposed to die. And this guy, Jupiter, shows up and he's like, come with me to the land of Nevermore. You're gonna go through these trials. And if you beat all these trials, you can become a citizen of Nevermore. If you don't wanna die, come with me. So she goes with him. And then when she gets to Nevermore, it's like this magical, fantastical place where there's like talking cats, and she's living in this hotel that like always changes its appearance based on like all the guests' wishes. Like the bedroom that you're staying in, the house just like knows how you feel and it will like make it. It's very like, I don't know, I would say it's like Harry Potter meets like Howl's Moving Castle meets some other like fantastical thing. Like I don't know how to explain it. It just has those vibes, especially if you're looking for something to replace Harry Potter. I think this would be good for you because, you know, a lot of us, we don't want to engage with Harry Potter anymore. And then we have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. You've probably heard of this before, but it is one of the best cozy fantasies that has a really good romance in it. Also, it has kind of a light academia vibe, so it could have gone for the September academia, but I will say there is a pretty heavy like winter setting in this. So that's why I felt like it was more like November vibes, because again, like maybe some snow is starting to fall. And you know, we're fall, but we're also like, you know, it's getting cold. In this, we're following our titular character, Emily Wilde, and she is a professor that studies fairies. She goes on this journey to this very snowy village to study the snow fae. While she's there, she commits a faux pas of offending everybody in this village, and nobody wants to work with her anymore, and she kind of needs them for her research. So then her academic rival Wendell shows up, and he starts charming the pants off of everybody in the village. So they have to put their differences aside and work together to kind of start, you know, researching all these fairies. And there is a lot of like dark fae elements, very similar to Half a Soul. What I like about this series is that, again, fae are not people that you want to fuck with. Like, they have very like trickster vibes. A lot of them are a little bit evil. And so she's kind of navigating all these different fae throughout this book. This is just, it will give you cozy vibes. It really will, I promise you. And also the romance between Emily and Wendell. If you like an academic rivals to lovers, this is it. Final cozy fantasy book I'll recommend. To be honest, I had to cut this list short because there are so many cozy fantasies that I love. I'm gonna go with Trust of the Emerald Sea. This is probably one of the only Brandon Sanderson books that I actually have really enjoyed. I've only read a few of his books, but this is probably my favorite of his. This is about, obviously, a girl named Tress. She lives in this world where the oceans are made up of spores. And so there's all these pirates and people who sail the seas, but they're not like normal like water seas. It's like these spores that if you touch them, they're like poisonous and they'll kill you. And so she ends up going on a pirate ship because the love of her life gets taken away by this witch, and so she is wanting to traverse the seas to go save him. And so it's kind of like The Princess Bride, but if Buttercup was the one to go save the guy. I'm gonna be upfront with you, I don't think I've ever seen The Princess Bride, but I know people always compare it to this. Okay, I will say, we're gonna move away from cozy for just a second, because I think that November is also the perfect month if we're really cuddled up by the fire reading books, not only to read cozy things, but also to kind of maybe invest in like longer books or books that like need more of your brain power. So this next category is going to be sci-fi books. The first of these that I'm going to recommend is The World Gives Way. Our main character is an indentured servant. We're living in this world where Earth is dead. They're dead. And all these rich people went on a spaceship that has everything in it that you would need. It's like its own world. Like there's ecosystems, there's oceans, there's, you know, things, whatever. But when the rich people went on this, when Earth was ending, they were like, we don't want to do our own laundry. So they brought on all these people, like poor people, to be their indentured servants. And so if you were born into a line of these people, you now just have to do that forever. And the idea is that once they get to the planet they're going to, you will get your freedom. But our main character, Mira, she's not about this life. She's like, you're telling me that I'm not gonna be free for another 50 fucking years? Absolutely fucking not. And so she's been figuring out a way to kind of escape this servitude and like get a new identity. Her plans get foiled when the people that she works for end up getting murdered, and now she is the main suspect of the murder. So she sets off across the ship trying to get away from authorities. And then we have this other main character whom I believe his name is Tobias. He is the detective that's trying to hunt her down. So it's kind of a cat and mouse game where we're switching between their perspectives. Like he's trying to hunt her down, she's trying to evade him, and we also are on this spaceship, so it's taking place in space. I will say it's like light sci-fi. I guess it doesn't really use a lot of your brain, but this book will make you cry. Tell me which HBO exec I need to use a hair tie in 15 minutes to get them to make a series. Let me know and I'll get to work. I'll get on my knees and I'll get to work. Was that too dirty? Was that a bad joke? Probably. Anyway. All right, up next, again, not a book that you need. I guess, I don't know why I said you would need your brain for these sci-fi books. You don't. You know, I don't read like heavy sci-fi. But again, I just think November is the time for sci-fi. I don't know. So up next, we have one of the only things that Stephanie Meyer ever did right, and that is The Host. You might have thought, surely I'm not going to watch this recommendations video and get recommended a Stephanie Meyer book, but you would be wrong. I saw this on my shelf when I was picking books down and I was like, oh my God, I want to talk about The Host. I love The Host. Honestly, underrated. People need to talk about this more. We are following a post-apocalyptic world yet again, and in this there is these aliens that have come down and they have taken over people's bodies. So they're like hosts that kind of go into people. And so underground there's a group of people who are kind of evading the hosts, and our main character is a girl who was part of this resistance group, but she got separated and she got a host put into her, but she's like psychologically still there. So it's like two characters in one body, and there's a bit of a love triangle because the girl Melanie and then the host and her named Wanda are both in love with the same guy because Wanda has all of Melody's memories. And so she now really wants the guy, but the guy's like, ew, you're a host. I don't really know what else to say about it, but it's a lot of fun. There's also a movie with Saoirse Ronan, if you're interested in watching it. I have seen the movie once. I don't remember if it was good. I don't think it's good based on what people have said, but I actually don't remember what I thought of it because it's been a really long time since I saw that movie. Maybe I should watch it again. Anyway, up next we have Project Hail Mary, because I will find any excuse to recommend this book. Also, a movie for this is coming out soon with Ryan Gosling, so if you want to read this before the movie, now's a good time. But this is about a guy who wakes up in the middle of space, and he is on a random spaceship, and he's like, why the fuck am I here? I'm not an astronaut, because he is a science teacher that teaches like high school or something. And we kind of go through him getting back his memories, trying to figure out why he is on this ship, what's going on. He comes across a different character that I would die for. It's very cute. And this book is just a lot of fun. It's very funny. It's very heartwarming. There's a lot of math in this. This one does go a little harder on the sci-fi elements and the math elements. I will say my eyes kind of glazed over on that, but you don't really need to know science or math to like this book. I just think this is all about the characters and the friendship. And then the final sci-fi book that I'm going to recommend is more of a cozy sci-fi. We're getting back into the cozy. And that is A Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is a book about this ragtag group of people who work on a spaceship together, kind of traveling through wormholes and creating and fixing wormholes. That's their whole thing. It reminds me a lot of Firefly, if you ever liked Firefly, but it's like a crew of like some aliens, some humans, and they're all like coming together. There's some romances happening between people, and we are just kind of like following them through their day-to-day life on this ship. And there's not much of a plot, but it is just kind of like a cozy, there is a plot, but it's like overarchingly, it's just kind of like a cozy vibe. And I feel like you would make an amazing television show. And I really enjoyed it. It is kind of vignettes, so I almost feel like when I was reading it, it was very episodic. All right, the next category is a mix of fantasy and then one historical book, but basically it's like long books, like books that like maybe take a little bit more of your brain power. Like these ones actually might take more of your brain power, where you're like have to kind of invest a lot of time in them because they're a lot longer. The first of these is Silver Under Nightfall, which is a vampire book. So technically this could even go in October. We're following Remy, who is a half human, half vampire hunter. The aristocrats, the higher up people, have to start playing nice with the vampires, so they kind of have a treaty. And so Remy has to work with some vampires to kind of uncover what's going on with these mutated people. And this has kind of like a, I'll say like a Regency like Victorian fantasy setting, where there is an element of it being like high society. There is a polyamorous relationship that happens in here that is queer. If you like Castlevania, this will give you Castlevania vibes. Up next, we have a chunky one. We have The Will of the Many. I think this could also be a September book. Something about this feels September. But again, November is about serious fantasy. We're using our brains. We have these people at the top who suck the energy and the life force, the will of the lower people. So it's kind of like, picture an MLM, but fantasy style, where it's like the people at the top have the most power and everyone that's trickling down gets like a fraction of that power all the way down to the losers at the bottom. And our main character is working in a prison, and he comes across this important senator who is looking to find someone who can be like an espionage spy to go into the school where they're like building a weapon, and he wants to find some information out about it. So he hires our main character. He comes across him at this prison and he's like, hey, you seem like you could fit the bill for this. So he sends him off to this academy. He's kind of a double agent where he has his own secrets, but he's also working for this senator. Do not get it twisted. When I first saw this being recommended all around, everyone was saying that this was their favorite fantasy book ever. I really just thought this was a boy fantasy. It was giving boy fantasy vibes, right? And the main character was a guy. I was like, ew, I don't want to read that. But then I gave it a chance for a video, and this was a 5-star. This was so fucking good. Okay, our next long book is the historical fiction, and that is Pachinko. This is about a Korean family living in Japan during the time that Japan was occupying Korea. So it is a story like that's generational, starting out in the early 1900s, following a character named Sunja, who ends up having a child out of wedlock. And that decision kind of leads into everything that happens in this story, because it starts out in Korea with Sunja, but then it eventually, you know, moves over to Japan, where they're like Koreans living in Japan, because I learned a lot about Asian history, honestly, when I was reading this. Japan was up to some nonsense back in the day. They were invading a lot of people. A lot of bad stuff was happening. And so you're kind of following this like harrowing story of this family throughout the generations as like bad things just like keep happening to them. I sobbed so many times while I was reading this. There actually is a TV series on Apple TV, and I need to watch it, but I'm afraid to be hurt again. Okay, our last long book is another fantasy, and that is Theft of Swords. Technically technically, this is actually 2 books in one. It's a bind up. The reason I recommend this is that if you're newer to fantasy and you don't want to read cozy fantasy, you want to read something that's a little more intense, that has more like drama and high stakes, but you also don't want something that's like the will of the many. I think this one's really good because the fantasy elements, like the magic elements in this, are very, very light. It takes a while through the series to kind of really get to the bottom of what's going on with the magic. We are following these 2 thieves named Royce and Hadrian. And I told you, I love a book where the main characters are thieves. So they're hired to steal a sword. And when they show up on the scene to steal a sword, the king has been murdered and they get framed for the murder. So then through a series of events, they have to kidnap the prince and like run away to try to clear their name. And so that's kind of like the first book that we're following in here. And then the second book is kind of the aftermath of what happens after that. That brings us to the end of this video. I'm sure you guys were having a lot of fun while you're watching this, but I have to admit, I wasn't having that much fun while I was filming it because my back hurts and I've been filming for over an hour. So I gotta go. If you made it to the end of this video, please post a frog in the comments because of my beautiful gay frog. And I hope that you found at least one book that you want to read from this list. Let me know down below which titles jumped out at you. Also, please give me your fall recommendations. If you feel like there are any quintessential September, October, or November fall reads, please let me know what they are and what month they belong to. And I might even put them on my TBR because I'm trying to get out of a reading slump. It's been a long time since I finished a book and I need to get my life together. So I thank you all so much for watching. You're all beautiful. Have a nice day.